You were always presented to me as a bit of an older brother in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, because
When was that? When did that happen?
Well,
What happened?
I can't exactly remember, but I remember we sort of start to communicate and became close again. I think she was finishing with, what's his name? Yeah?
This is a podcast for Kel. This is Kelly's godfather, Uncle Des. Des and Kel's mum had met each other when she was 15, and when I was together with Kelly's mum in the mid-2000s, Des was always presented to me as a kind of mentor figure to Kelly's mum, a sort of surrogate older brother. They'd hung out about a decade previously, but just after the time Kelly's mum split with the father of her son, Des renewed their friendship. To Des, she told the same story that she'd told many people around that time, that her mother, Della, was sleeping with her ex, the father of her son.
And she had told me that her mother was sleeping with yeah, and stuff like that. So I started to try and see her like once a week and stuff like that. She was
Why? Because you were concerned about her as a friend?
Yeah.
Because you believed what she said?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like, all these people that are supporting her, I can understand to a certain extent when you know somebody or you think you know somebody and they tell you something, you take it at face value. You have no reason to doubt them. Okay, it may sound a little tall. You take somebody at face value, but you have your doubts. You see certain things. You think your mother taking up with your boyfriend.
Yeah, right.
That doesn't really go on too much in life. Yeah. So one evening I popped round and the front door was open. The communal door was open, and then her flat door was open. So I sort of walked in and was saying, right, but the place was in darkness, but it was twilight because it was summer. And Kel was there sprawled out on the bed sleeping. But anyway, I rang and said, like, where are you? What's going on? The door's open. I think she said she left the doors open in case there's a fire. So I said to her, look, if you need something to babysit, call me, but you can't go out and just leave the kids on their own with the doors open.
All right. Did you know she was out for a long while or a little while?
No, she said she'll be back soon anyway. And I think she did come back and I stayed until she come back. She was at, saying, like a bar or something.
She was at a bar?
Yeah. And from then, that's when I started to babysit more regularly, popping around there, seeing how she is. So that's how I got close to Kel. I used to take her for weekends and stuff when started her comedy career, and she'd be out in the nightclubs doing her comedy, so I was babysitting either Kelly and or Kelly on her own. I would take her for a weekend. Yeah, wasn't going to be about for the complete weekend. So I sort of got close to her and stuff like that and used to take her out and things like that. But we really got in like a house on fire.
You and Kel?
Yeah. You know?
Yeah. After I started going out with Kel's mother, I started to notice that she didn't communicate much with Kel, and there would often be suspicious comments. She knows exactly what she's doing. She's deliberately trying to wind me up. She'd often say that, and that seemed a strange level of suspicion to put on, a 10, 11-year-old as she was then. It was a grey area because the mum was often funny and had a gruff persona. But it later became apparent that when the mother was out doing gigs or drinking late at night, she would leave Kel, then aged 10, 11, alone in her flat and sometimes not return until daybreak.
It was very normal for her at a really young age to be left home alone for long periods of time.
This is Romina, Kel's friend from school.
Which I found so fucking confusing. I'm just like, mate, I'm like 12. If I'm home late from school, like, I wish my mum would fuck off a little longer kind of thing. So I could have the house to myself. All right.
Yeah, but it was.
Where the fuck is your mum? What the fuck are you talking about? What do you mean? And then she'd be like left with piles of cash, and I'm like, what the fuck have you got piles of cash for? And she's like, I need it for food and stuff for the week. And I'm like, the fuck are you food shopping for? Since when do we grocery shop? We're like 13. Who gives a fuck? Yeah, you could see she was just screaming neglect. The undone hair, the being left to grocery shop.
In the early years, if I'm honest, I minimised the signs I was seeing. This is a section of a conversation I had with Kel's friend, Aseye.
While you were dating, in a sense, you were that figure, I don't know, parental figure, in a sense, or no?
Well, not at first, you see, and
Yeah.
at first I was part of the problem.
Because you had that emotional relationship with...
But I did remember thinking more than once at the beginning, oh, this is quite refreshing. She's not a helicopter mother. She allows the child to have some freedom and some independence. I chose that view, and I chose it because it was a convenient one, because I wanted to be with a mum. That was irresponsible of me.
It was irresponsible, but I don't think you could have known any better.
No, I
because
didn't.
you
Well, I could have
weren't
known
with...
better, but I couldn't have known more about... I didn't know much more about what was happening in the house. But I certainly, with her and Kel, over the first couple of years, when me and my ex broke up, it was often over Kel, and it was the way she was treated.
Because you started to know more.
I started to see more. I mean, I remember the first major breakup that I had with my ex was over Kel, was over how she treated her. But as I've said to you before, you know, I was in love with your daughter. I was weak, and I thought I could mediate it. I thought I could handle it. I thought I was strong enough to take the abuse, and it was abuse. It was, you know, when she got going, I've never been on the receiving end of anything like it. And when they moved in with me in 2007, and they lived with me for 2 years, that's when I saw it. That's when I saw the extent of it, and that's where I couldn't ignore it. There'd been a huge warning sign of Kel's mental state when she was about 11, I think. It was long before Kel and her mother came to live with me, but I'd got a call from the mother, really distraught, to come over because Kel had been cutting her arms. And this was a time that I remember where the mother showed great remorse, and she vowed to spend more time with Kel. And I vaguely remember that things were better for a while, but it eventually just got lost in the shit. But once they moved in with me in 2007, I dare say the amount of coke the mother was doing made it worse. But the further I found that my relationship with Kel's mother progressed, as magnificent as she could be, there was an increasing cost for those times when she would become an entirely different personality. And the good times became longer and fewer and further between. The times when she would get physically violent, either against me or against the property, because she would smash the place up, would be followed by these withdrawals into depression, where she wouldn't come out of the bedroom for days. She was also separately very vulnerable too, phoning me on at least 4 occasions to tell me that she'd overdosed on paracetamol. Now, sometimes she hadn't, but there were at least 2 occasions when I remember going to the hospital with her where they pumped her stomach. And again, those times were always followed by periods of reflection and a reaching out for support from me and others. But then she would stop engaging within days, declare herself well, and it wouldn't be long before we'd be back in the cycle of abuse. This is the background against which Kel was living. Certainly also Kel was aware that police had to be called to the house several times. There were times I had to call them after I'd been assaulted by the mother, although I didn't press charges because I wanted to try and work things out. But also when she'd been acting aggressively towards Kel. And it was always to avoid something escalating from becoming physical. I'm also aware of an occasion where the next door neighbours called the police to calm down the shouting and banging that they were hearing through the walls during a period where the mother was alone in my house with Kel.
And Kelly told me about that.
What did she say?
This is a saying.
She told me about her mum. There was a time the police came and her mum had a lot of coke in her bag.
She would take it out, I mean, and not just on Kelly, on me too, of course.
Yeah, and Kelly mentioned that.
Oh, really?
She mentioned that she was violent to you. She mentioned that she was violent to Della as well.
As you know, we had police to the house. She was arrested a couple of times. The point is that Kel witnessed a lot of things and was on the receiving end of a lot of stuff. And there's so many police call-outs. There's 2 you see in the police reports where they've come out because the mother is trying to evict Kel, just trying to get her out of the house. And I've called them in order to stop the mother from doing that. There was a lot of rejection of Kel played out quite openly. There was one occasion that I'd actually forgotten about until Des reminded me, where the mother had, in fact, taken Kel and left her outside the offices for children's services one night. And I can't remember if I went to pick Kelly up or if he did that night, but he was definitely on the phone with her.
There was another time when she had been taken into social services overnight at one stage, and me and her spent a good 2 hours talking on the phone, and she was worried about what's going to happen, where's this all going to go, what's going to happen to her. And I spent the night just trying to reassure her, we'll come through it together, we'll be okay, you know, bad things happen to good people, but you get through it. You know, that's the most important thing, you get through it. Talking to a child on the phone, locked up in some place where she's never been before, it is heartbreaking.
She would be coming in the house every day going, is she okay? What mood is she in? Like, you totally had to negotiate the mother's mood. And then, of course, the stuff you would hear the mother say, 100 different ways of telling her that she's fat or ugly or not special or stupid. From later on, we know that Kel really absorbed that, really internalized that.
Yeah.
My ex would say in private to me, this is why I thought there's a real problem here, because she just wasn't wise to what she had with Kel. And I'd heard the mother for well over a year say to me in private how she didn't want Kel, or, you know, I don't get why everybody likes her so much. And sometimes I heard her say, I hate her. I don't really want to look after her. I don't see what's special about her. And I'm going, she's fantastic. How can you say that? This is Romina.
And there's this, you know, the lack of stability, mental stability. That's all she pined for as a child. Was just to know whether you were going to be mad or not that day. Were you going to be friendly or not? Because I don't believe her mum was 24/7 mean.
No.
Her mum was just mean on surprise. Just testing your fight or flight for shits and giggles. And I feel like people rarely look over the fact that medically when you do that to a child, they grow up pathologically different. And not being terrified because you might die, but just being terrified because you don't know if you're offending anyone. You don't know if you're the cause of some crap. You're fed this idea that you're some sort of curse.
I remember admiring deeply Kel's calm. She was composed. She kept her chin up and she stayed quiet. But those eyes didn't miss a thing. She saw and heard everything. And that's the period over 2008 and 2009 that I came to love her and realised that I was bonded to her. I'm recording this separately because I've been asked by someone who's listened to this to clarify what I mean when I say that I came to love Kel, and that I should emphasise that the feelings that I had towards her were parental. And apart from the fact that I resent having to justify what I mean because I think it's obvious, I was in a situation here with Kel dealing with this behaviour that was often nightmarish. You know, there's a young person in the middle of that who doesn't seem to have anybody, who's handling it extremely well, and she was the brunt of a lot of it. And I was quite resilient because I was 40, but it was different for Kel. It was intense, some of what happened, and at times it was very disturbing. And she was such a sweet person that she didn't need to carry any of that. So I didn't realise that I actually wanted to look after her until a bit later. But when the opportunity presented itself a bit later, as you'll hear, I said yes, without a second's thought. And I think a lot of people in my situation would have done the same thing.
Her mum was quite young when she had her as well,
18.
isn't it? Yeah.
And by all accounts, the mum just wanted to go out and live her own life at 18, regardless of whether she...
Well, when she was 8, she would have been my age.
Yeah, right.
The mum would have been my age now. And
Exactly.
I can't even imagine...
You have an 8-year-old.
And like, with all the needs that children have as well. But... that wasn't, Kelly didn't ask for that, you know, it's not Kelly's fault that happened. And it's the mum's responsibility to, listen, get your shit together, like, you've had a kid now, you need to get your act together.
Had the mother not been so conflicted...
Unpredictable.
And Kelly and I would not have bonded the way we did. But what I understood was, oh fuck, this girl's brilliant, she hasn't got anyone... And also, we're both of us seeing each other go through shit.
She didn't have anyone.
Yeah, I mean, it turned out she had a grandmother. That's what I didn't know.
But then
That's
her
what I didn't
grandmother
understand.
wasn't
Was aware at that
but that's the issue, isn't it? Her grandmother wasn't here.
Grandma Della at this point had already moved back to Barbados. To my knowledge, there was no one on the ground who Kel could turn to. So social services got involved again around this time because of the police call-outs, and then there was another time I'd gone to the GP because I couldn't handle the stress of what was happening at home, and then they called social services because there was a child in the house. And we had a period where over 2008 and 2009, the mother wasn't engaging with social services, but I was, and I felt that we could find a way of working it out because I still believed at that time that the mother could, defeat her demons. And I certainly hadn't seen the mother be especially physical with Kel, although as you'll hear Kel say, her mother in fact was being physical with her, but then instructed her not to tell anyone about it. And I've heard some of that behaviour defended as in, oh, that's what goes on in Caribbean households, that there can be physical chastisement. But it wasn't that. It was a totally different level of animus and dysfunction. There was no value system. There was no order in this. It could come from anywhere. And you would watch it take a hold of her, and she would talk herself into it because you could literally see her looking for a fight. And whatever you did, you realised she's looking for a reason. Towards the end of 2008, I was starting to realise that there was no future in my relationship with the mother. And I remember thinking at one period, oh, but maybe I should stick around and try and take it until Kel is 16, and then maybe she can, when she's 16, she can make her own decisions, because I think she'd just turned 14 at that time. And I tried to involve Kelly's godfather, Uncle Des, who's a truly good man and who truly loved Kel.
I think we met one time in the park or something.
Yeah.
And said, like, your friend is in trouble here. She needs help. Yeah? You think she's a coke fiend. And then you told me that she was doing drugs. One time I came around here, the place was absolutely thrashed. Yeah? From top to bottom. She'd ripped the doors off. I think I may have been looking after Shaquelle because you had taken her somewhere and she had confessed to you that she was on coke and she was hiding it all around the house. I don't know if that was before or after we went round the drug dealer's house.
It must have been before.
And from then things spiraled downhill.
He tried to appeal to the mother, and I remember on several occasions in 2008 and 2009 following the mother out of the house with Des to try to get her to come back and be a mother because she was off to go and do drugs. And I remember both of us sitting outside her drug dealer's house opposite Pentonville Prison calling at her to come down. I remember she fell out with you.
Yeah. Because she thought I was taking your side.
Yeah, absolutely.
She was ranting and raving all the time. When I picked her up from the station, she tried to jump out the moving car.
Right.
Because all she was doing was complaining about you doing this and you doing that. And she wasn't doing that much coke. It's only a little line she was doing and stuff like that. But she just wouldn't listen to reason. I even asked my friend who's a drug counsellor to try and find her a place. And he did. But she was gone. It's like you speak to one person 1 minute and then it's a different after. Yeah, you just couldn't get through to her. 1 minute she was down and broken, and next minute she was up, arrogant, in your face. You didn't know which you was gonna meet. Yeah, but in all the conversations with her about you, she was showing me some picture of you at a party, pointing out some girl, saying that's the girl he's sleeping with this girl, that's the slag he's sleeping with. But at no point at all did she ever mention any inappropriate behaviour between you and Kelly. None whatsoever.
And when would this have been?
Well, she was still living there.
In the early months of 2009, I was away from home a lot. Partly it was work, I was gigging as a stand-up, but also often I'd just have to stay out the house because of the physical threat I felt being with her. Social services were still involved in monitoring the situation. At the time, I didn't think she was taking out her physical aggression on Kel. So it seemed to happen with me when she was drunk or high. She came home late at night. That's when things would get nasty. But I did become aware in April or May of a couple of times where Kel said she had beat her. I would find out from Kel over the years that Kel had sustained various injuries from her mother. As you'll hear from Kel over the next few episodes, she sustained black eyes, bruises and split lips from her mother's attacks over this period and later. A friend of mine, a woman who'd become very close to Kel a few years ago, submitted a letter for the court, but withdrew it for fear of the online reprisals from the mother, who was publicly attacking people who'd written statements for the case. But I remember her telling me years ago of a scene with Kel where she'd noticed a mark on Kelly's knee, and Kelly had said that that was where her mother had hit her with a piece of wood with a nail sticking out of it. And in April 2009, the mother also broke Kelly's foot during one of her attacks. Even though she ended up being hospitalised, Kelly was frightened to tell anyone what had happened.
I had to drag it out of her. What the fuck happened to your foot?
Romina.
What happened to your foot? You don't break your foot walking into furniture. Otherwise, A&E would be fucking rammed. Do you know what I mean? No, Kel, you didn't walk into the fucking furniture. I'd drag it out of her. She didn't want to tell me. She wouldn't tell me her mum pushed her down the stairs. Which is fine. That can't be easy. That can't be easy. To have to say that to someone. But carrying it around with you, that's what happened. That's what she did. She carried it. She carried it everywhere.
I remember when she went into hospital with her broken foot and her story just not adding up. Des and I were there. And I remember that she seemed frightened to say it, but she did eventually say that her mum had caused it. And then she got very scared at the thought that we would have to report it.
Up until that time, when Kel turned up, I wasn't aware of any abuse towards Shaquille. I never saw any.
We had been to the hospital though when she had broken her foot.
Beforehand,
I remember us at round Kel's bed. Kel was here.
I
was
thought
here
that
and
was
you were
after
there.
that.
No, that was before. And Kel begging us not to tell social services, not to tell the police.
Yeah.
I remember that. And you and I kind of go, we got to go to the police, and Kel begging us not to.
Yeah.
And us deciding not to.
I just remember Kel being so scared and adamant that we should not tell anyone that her mother had done this. And we reluctantly went along with it, I suppose, not to make Kel feel that she was being betrayed. Des might be right in that he recalls that conversation that we had with Kel happening about a month later during another visit to hospital. If he's right, then the decision not to tell social services makes more sense because Kel was about to be taken into care anyway. But either way, it's not a decision I can defend, and we should have reported it straight away. Without taking responsibility away from Des and me, it also shows the kind of psychological control that people like Kelly's mother exert over a situation where you are required to keep quiet about things that are wrong in the name of, placation, or perhaps in Kel's case, survival.
It doesn't make any sense because she could have just left me with grandma.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, she could have.
Many years later, Kel reflected on the differences between being brought up by her grandmother and her mother. This recording was taken on January the 3rd, 2018, 3 months before she died. Kel, me and my dad, Alberto, who you'll hear on the recording, had all gone out for dinner. In this conversation, Kel compared her time living with Della to the time she spent living with her mum.
I do wonder occasionally what my life would be like, or what I would be like if I just stayed with grandma. My grandma was looking after me. I did a lot better in school. Just having someone calm around you who loves you.
Yes, exactly.
That's a big thing. And I have happy memories of living with grandma. I remember happy memories, like smooth things that she used to do to make me smile and stuff like that. But I remember they were good days. I remember a happy feeling, if that makes sense. And I'm okay for just I can remember grandma doing stuff we'd go out, and if it was raining and stuff, she would
I was allowed to sit next to the radio, but not on the radio because I might get chilblains or something if I got my hands directly on the radio because I will. And then she would like dry my hair and like get me like a hot drink because she was worried that I would like catch a cold or something. Even though it's a virus, that's not how it works. And like things like that. And like cooking breakfast in the mornings and and just like laughing, her like tickling me and her like she did this thing called like butterfly kisses, so she'd get really close and like blink on my face. And I remember things like that, but I don't remember things like that with my mother.
Don't remember things?
I don't remember things like that with my mother. Like I remember he might go somewhere nice. She might be funny sometimes, but I remember like little
loving,
affectionate
caring.
I remember. Did you ever witness anything like that? Like doting things? I don't
No,
think there was
not
any.
doting. But no. I remember her being perhaps mortified. I mean, when you were cutting yourself at age 11. And
What was that?
I felt when I remember us sitting in the bedroom in Crouch End, in her bedroom. And I remember sitting on that bed and I remember her clutching you and it felt to me like she was worried for you and not for her. It's difficult. It's difficult to remember warm things and nice things between the two of you because the tendency of the memory is to remember the awful things and the you know.
I don't remember so many nice things about grandma. Of course I remember horrible things about grandma, but not
Sure,
so horrible.
but not that.
Like hit me with the slipper when I didn't do my times tables right. Like I remember those things, but I'm not so hung up on them because they were so few and far between. And also,
Right.
you kind of know that it comes from a place of like her growing up at a different age kind of thing.
Grandma, sorry,
Yeah,
say it,
her grandma growing up at a different age, and it wasn't like she hit me with a slipper, yes, but it was like it would burn and be warm, but it's not like
it wasn't
she ever broke my foot.
Yeah, right.
Or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, she was taking.
Grandma never gave me a black eye kind of thing, so it's not
You got a black eye for fucking. How old were you?
14.
Did I see the black eye? Was I around for the black eye?
I wasn't allowed to show you. She punched me in the face at the supermarket because she had stolen your phone, and I tried to subtly make you aware of it, but then she noticed that I did it, and then she punched me in the face at the supermarket, and I had like a purple thing here, and I wasn't allowed to show you.
What was it? Punch you? Everything that
Because where my loyalties lie, kind of thing.
now you're thinking back. You think that thing that did to you, she did it as a result of a reaction, or she was completely.
No, because she did it. It was delayed. She did it on purpose. It was delayed. It wasn't like she
Right, it
found
wasn't
out.
like she lost control. Of
No, she was delayed because I did it in the house. She noticed it,
Right,
and then we went out.
and she
A
surprised
couple
you
hours
with it.
later, yeah, and then she told me why she did it.
Oh, because she just did it out of the blue.
Yeah, it was
Fucking
delayed.
calculate. And did you have anyone that you could talk to about that then?
I mean, I'm not going to speak to my friends about it. And then there wasn't like I was in like a therapist office. But to be honest, I mean, I don't think at that time I would have been able to speak to anyone about it. Even when I did eventually go to therapy, I didn't speak to them about what was going on. I lied and said I was getting bullied at school or something. And that was like because how do you even like begin to talk about it when you're not allowed to talk about these things for such a long time? Like,
You
under
remember that
age,
age,
like,
the more delicate age, I mean,
Fuck, absolutely. It's just the control. It's
13,
the
14
power
years
of
of age.
adults to scare people and to just shut them down.
On May the 31st, 2009, I'd been away for a few days, but I heard of a very serious scene between Kel's mother and Kel, where the mother tried to hang herself in front of her daughter, and then she sent Kel out to buy paracetamol for her so that she, the mother, could kill herself. And Kel apparently just walked out of the house and was cutting herself, and she walked all the way over to Finsbury Park, and she showed up at our Uncle Des's house. And Des says that her arms were just covered in blood. And so he straight away contacted the hospital, social services. They contacted the police. And this was the trigger for social services finally to come in and remove Kel from her mother's care. And at that time, the concern was so great that a police protection order was made, preventing the mother having any unsupervised access to Kel. So Kelly had to be put into an adolescent mental health unit. I then came back. Kel's mother moved out in the first week of June 2009. Kel had been seeing a psychologist over that period at the Whittington, and she'd been saying that she wanted to divorce from her mother. So afterwards I went into social services and they were going to put Kel into care. And I said, well, you don't have to do that. Why didn't she just stay here? Because she's got her room here. She can carry on going to school here. And that's what they wanted to do, because they wanted just Kel to have continuity. They didn't want to break that up. So me and Des and social services drew up a residence order that would allow Kel to stay. And do you remember us making an agreement with social services that we would look after Kel?
That we would look after. I remember going down to their offices or something. I remember sitting in the station. I remember saying, yeah, we'll take her, we'll look after her. Didn't really want her.
Like literally from 1 week, that last week of June that she was here, that first week of June, which was the last week that she ever spent in the house, where she was going, I can't look after her, I don't want to look after her. And she went away. So me and Des and social services get this residence order together. I check with Kel, do you want this to happen? Kel says yes. So I'm going to go to court to do this, and Kel's going to stay here. The mother just comes right back in, like she goes away for a weekend. And she comes back, and a week later, and she starts making complaints about the social worker. She starts saying she's been harassed, she's been victimised. Just starts the usual, just allegations. I'm the mother. I'm not having this daughter go and live with this middle-aged white man who's never looked after children before. And then at that point, she starts to sexualise it and say he's got a strange interest in my daughter. Not during the relationship, after. And then she passes a psychological assessment, because in addition to being nuts, the mother is also very good at not being nuts. She's very good at just... It's this cycle of abject depression and sadness and remorse, and then straight on her feet and fighting.
The way that she would carry on, she'll be like this today, and then she'll, jump and she'll change her behavior like that. Because she would swear at people just for looking at her.
Right.
I understand that she had this fight with her ex's ex.
Hang on, it's too confusing now. Which ex? The father of any... Oh, okay, yeah, I know who you're talking about. So her son's father, so the guy before me.
Yes.
Her son's father's ex. Yeah, she attack her in Ridley Road Market or something? She attacked her
in the market.
Yeah.
And she was arrested.
And she got a record for that. She got a conviction for that.
As far as I know, yes.
It's always conflictive. I mean, she came at me with a knife. She punched the shit out of me. I had black eyes in that relationship. And she punched the shit out of the father of her son, because he told me all about that.
Yeah, well, he told me all about it too. Right. He told me like how he would be in bed and how she came in and she ripped the covers off him.
Exactly the same thing happened to me February the 1st, 2008. I couldn't go to work that weekend.
But you see, the thing is, I would never buy into that sort of behavior. You see, because she's got like two personas, she can turn it on and off. Right. Like a light switch.
She manages to get, she basically starts getting aggressive. Social services get intimidated. She's told social services not to speak to me, so they can't talk to me because I don't have PR. Again, it's like, wait a minute. For a year and a half or longer, you've been saying, I'm the responsible adult in this situation. And you're about to make agreements with me to look after this girl. You know there's nothing to what this woman is saying. And yet, all of a sudden, I'm out the picture. They give her back control eventually of Kel. She then moves Kel out of the borough, and social services shut the investigation. I mean, I was absolutely beside myself because I didn't know you existed. I didn't know you were a nice person and that you cared about her. To say I was beside myself, in fact, is an understatement. I was more worried about Kel when I'd heard that she'd been returned to her mother's care, and I couldn't fathom the decision. I'll be honest with you. I couldn't fathom it based on what they knew. That because the mother had performed a certain set of checklists and had passed a psych assessment, they were willing to return her after the horrors of not 12 weeks ago. I'd been informed by one of the social workers as late as July the mother was insufficiently engaged with social services. And at the end of August, it was back to mum. I want to tell you about a very eye-opening conversation that I had with somebody recently. It was on April the 20th, 2018. It was just 13 days after Kelly had died. And I spoke to the social worker who had been assigned to our case in 2008 and 2009. The reason I was speaking to her was because I was asking her to approve the release of the social service records into our case to counter the mother's allegations that she'd done nothing wrong and social services were always investigating something else, towards the end me. Claudette, the social worker, expressed her condolences and said yes, of course she would support releasing the records. And then she said, quite extraordinarily, we got it wrong in 2009. I think we let ourselves get swayed because the mother was quite well known. She was on TV at that point, and she was a figure in the community. The social worker then said, well, at least Kel had been kept safe because, as you're about to hear, Kel's mother would send her off to Barbados within a few months to live with Grandma Della. That's all very well, but it doesn't account for the period between September and December 2009, during which time Kel lived with her mother in a flat in Ealing, and as you're going to hear, suffered some of the most extreme abuse that she would take from her. I'm not allowed to disclose the contents of the social service records, but social services clearly got it wrong in 2009. They had enough information to make a different call. And despite the serious concerns that were raised not just by me, but by several others at that time, and historically, which you see in the records, social services elected to return Kel to her mother's care, and as a result, further harm came to her. People should be allowed to look at those files. The social workers felt unable to follow their instincts, and they buckled under the pressure of the mother, who, admittedly, is a force of nature, knows her rights, and makes threats at every turn. And the reason I'm saying that is because I'm looking at the files right now, and they not only corroborate, but they fill in a lot of detail for anybody interested in Kel's case. The mother now had license to behave how she liked, without anyone to stand up to her or restrain her. For Kel, this would mark a decided turn for the worse. This is a podcast for Kel.